Guys, Ali Juzette here, and we have a bunch of crazy stuff happening in the next month. And it all starts tomorrow, September the 1st. And so I had to talk about it, and I'm sorry I've been a little AWOL. It was my birthday on Tuesday, and this year I have my sun in the eighth house. I have Mercury and Venus in the eighth house, intercepted. I have a Scorpio midheaven and Pluto in the first house, which is all Pluto is the governor of Scorpio and the eighth house. And so these are all like very big recluse and hermit energies. And I didn't expect to feel it so strongly, but like, I don't know why. Anyways, I feel it. Let's go ahead and talk about the crazy stuff that's happening tomorrow. Okay. And this is the wrong way to start. Here is the most important thing that you need to know. Pluto is re-entering Capricorn for the last time in 244 years tomorrow, September the 1st. Okay. September 1st is when this party gets started for the last time. And, Pluto has been swinging back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn for months now. And every single time I wondered, like, is this when things are going to get bad? Is this when things are going to get bad? Because, of course, when Pluto entered Capricorn back in 2008 in the fall, we had a very big problem, right? Dealing with the economy, the housing market, all this stuff that Capricorn governs, okay? And now Pluto is entering Capricorn again at 7:58 p.m. Washington, D.C. That's when it all happens, almost 8 o'clock p.m. tomorrow night, Sunday night. And it's not there for long. We're going to have Pluto in Capricorn from September the 1st until November 19th, which puts us right at the end of the election, right? I mean, I think we're in for some really interesting events. When Pluto is in Capricorn, we see upheaval and the pruning away of what is dead. Pluto always prunes away what is dead so that new life can emerge. Okay. It's the gardener with the big garden shears that says that branch is dead and it has to go. We saw that in a really big way in 2008 when, all these like predatory lending practices were brought to light and Pluto snipped them right off. And we had this huge crash. The big question is on its final exit out of the house that governs the economy, what is Pluto going to bring to light? And how is it going to trim away what is dead? That's the big question. And let me ask. I mean, it is true. I've been nervous because I do have some money in the stock market. And I told my husband, I think I want my money out of there. I think I want it out now. Like, I've been fine with it this whole time. But this week I was like, I don't feel good about this anymore. And I don't want it in there anymore. And so we've been like negotiating because he thinks it's going to be fine forever. And I just don't think that. And so I think we're taking out half, but it's like still, we have a guy that is in charge of it. So, anyways, we're working on it. But I'm really curious to see what's going to happen. Now, when Pluto entered Capricorn, it did not exactly correlate with the exact date of the housing market crash. They were two different days, and as we head into this new season of Pluto entering Capricorn for the last time, I don't know that we're going to see something happening on the exact dates, of any meaningful date between September the 1st and November 19th. But would I be surprised if we made it to February without some serious situations that rock the economic boat? Yeah, I would personally be pretty surprised about that. But we just have to see. And another thing to keep in mind is that in 2008, for a lot of people, that felt like the end of the world. And I know some of you, I've met some of you in real life who have had your entire livelihoods ripped away because of the 2008 housing crisis. This was a really big deal, and it permanently altered the directions of people's lives. I got married that fall in the middle of it, and it was so hard to find jobs, and everybody was under enormous stress, and I don't know, it was a crazy time, and it has permanently left a mark on so many of us. And, life kept going and things continued, and like the housing market shifted. And so, how permanent will any shifts be from this Pluto transit? I really couldn't say. I don't think it's healthy to say, oh, it's the end of the world. I don't know that that's true, but I think it is a dynamic that's worth keeping an eye on. And for me, as I'm like making all my calculations about how I want to use the resources that I have, I've just kind of felt like there are things that I could use those resources for in the here and now that I would prefer to do that rather than possibly lose it all forever. Not to say that that is not to say that that is for sure what's going to happen, but um, there are things that I could put that money towards now that I would like to do. Um, and if things get so great in the future, then I'll just go reinvest again in the future and that will be fine. Let's go back and take a look at that chart. And then I want to look at it in the context of America's chart because there is some really interesting stuff going on. Now, over here is Pluto, and this is the moment that he re-enters that sign of Capricorn. And in that moment, Pluto will be in the 11th house that deals with large groups of people. And it also deals with our hopes and goals and dreams and visions of what we want for our future as the entire planet. Okay, this is going to be a global energy. What that tells me is that over these next, I don't even know how many weeks, probably, I guess, 4 weeks for September, 5 weeks for October. We're looking at 9, and then another 3 weeks in November. What is that? 12 weeks. So you have 12 weeks of this Pluto and Capricorn energy as it retrogrades back through Capricorn and then goes forward into Aquarius for the last time. During this 12 weeks, we may have some serious rethinking of what we want on a personal level and then on a national level. As it is election season in the United States, I'm thinking probably the masses, like if the 11th house governs the masses and hopes and dreams, the masses are going to have some little reckonings about what they actually want. They're going to have to really dig in and say, do I really want this? Do I want, the administration as it is now? Or am I willing to trade that out for an administration that, maybe I have disagreements with them in a serious way about other things, but maybe I liked how my life was in 2017 more than I like how it is in 2024, we're going to have to evaluate these questions. And this is a big invitation for all of us to look within ourselves and think about, Pluto deals with transitions and changes and dissolving and evolving. Okay, so what inside of ourselves do we want to dissolve? What external to ourselves do we want to dissolve? Where are we looking to evolve? That is a big question that we're all going to have come up for us in the next 12 weeks. And it's probably going to show up for us in a pretty big way, just given the climate of what is happening right now. Now, this right here, can you see that it makes a kite? This is called a grand kite. It has this grand trine right here, this triangle, and some people would say it's a loose orb because this is at 29 degrees, this is at 27 degrees, Uranus and Taurus, and then over here we have the black moon in Libra. And I don't know. I have friends that feel very strongly about having very tight orbs with especially these asteroids, and this is actually a mathematical point, the black moon, and with these slow-moving planets. But I'm actually reading a book right now that I might actually have right next to me. Nope, maybe I don't. It's called Planets and Solar Returns. It's pretty good. I've read it before, but I'm rereading it right now. And I forgot that author argues for a very loose orb because, I don't know, she just argues that the planets just are so impactful that actually a loose orb still counts. That's what she argues. So let's pretend it counts just for the sake of looking at this grand kite. Right here we have this trine. The blue lines are an easy flow, a natural flow between these energies. And right here we have the unexpected, dealing with issues of land and money. Okay, a really interesting placement. And Uranus actually is the guy in charge of the 11th house, the hopes and dreams, the groups of people. When I look at this, I'm seeing, okay, we need to be expecting the unexpected. And the unexpected is going to show up for us all to be reevaluating our hopes and dreams. What do we really want? It's for us to find clarity in what we authentically desire as our own future and the future of the economy, the future of our nation, our planet. Okay, big invitations to think again and to really get clear. And as I'm saying this, I'm hearing this like little message. This is a little prayer suggestion, which is to I mean, ask yourself if you want to pray this prayer, but you could ask our creator for any new perspectives that you need to have, like politically, or um in terms of voting, like just ask our creator for the humility to be open to any new ideas that you need to consider before it's time to vote. Um, and I will do this as well. Okay. So we're going to ask for some humility to accept new perspectives on our voting, and then ask for the new perspectives. If there's any new perspectives, if we have not considered something that we need to consider right now about our future and about the future of the groups of people that we are involved with, be that our neighborhood community, our church community, our state, our city, all of this kind of thing. This is a good time to be asking, what are the new perspectives that I need? Um, what can I do to be more aligned with my creator in how I'm moving forward? Now, these are trining with the black moon right here at 1 degree of Libra. And the black moon, I always refer to it as like the dark feminine, it's the medicine woman who is just deeply in control of her own life. She has really excellent boundaries, and she I don't know, she does what needs to be done in a feminine way, but also in I mean, like, she means business. She's not going to let anybody knock her over, which is a really interesting vibe to be in Libra, because Libra can be a little bit of a pushover at times. It doesn't have to show up that way, but because Libra is the scales of justice and it can so easily weigh the pros and cons, a lot of times it can get stuck in pros and cons zone. I just don't know. And the black moon is just not like that, in my opinion. The black moon really like decides what she wants and sticks her ground. So this is a very, very interesting vibe. What I'm seeing from this trine, this grand trine, is an invitation to step out of the wishy-washiness and to take a stand. And the really interesting thing about this is that everybody comes from a really different perspective. I actually wrote a big thing about this in my Facebook group, and I'll have to make a whole video just about it because I had a request to do that. But somebody asked, how can people with spiritual gifts look at the same person and see two different things? Like, how can two people with, the ability to look at somebody's spiritual nature, look at the same person and have one person really like them and one person feel like they're obviously evil? And so I wrote this whole thing. But one of the key points about this to understand is that everybody has an internal rubric against which they grade the entire world. And everybody has a different rubric. And two people that are both good people may have really different rubrics. And it just depends on their own perspective, their life experiences, like the books that they've read. Like, I would say that my own rubrics are very like philosophically informed. And I remember meeting with this one lady who is very gifted. She could not believe, my own opinions on some things. And she was like, how can you feel that way? And I was like, well, have you read The Law by Frederick Bastiat? And she's like, no, I've never heard of that. I'm like, well, then it's not worth my time to explain my opinion to you. Go read the effing book. Like, come on, lady. But anyway, here's the thing. We all have our different backgrounds and these ideas and these values that we're bringing to the situation. And so we're all seeing through our own lenses of bias. And as we are doing that in this exact season, we're going to see that even people like that we think are good people are going to come away with different conclusions to us. And those different conclusions are going to be based on their own perspectives, their own belief systems that may or may not be aligned with like divine reality. And that can be true of anybody. It can be true of me. If you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Allie would think that. Well, that's because I'm as biased as you, and we're both biased in different ways. And it's up to us to do what we can to become as objective as possible. I feel like I try to do that. I'm sure I could do better to do that. And that's why I think it's important to ask God at this time for some extra humility and some extra new perspectives, so that we can see the world in a way that is more aligned with the way that our Creator wants us to see the world. In my post on Facebook, in that comment anyway, I also talked about how I think that sometimes it's appropriate to be wrong. I really do think this. I really do think that everything is on its own timing, and sometimes we we feel really strongly about something and it turns out to be wrong. Have you had that experience? Because I have. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay for us to be wrong for a while. And I think that, in God's divine timing, there's a time and a place for us to wake up about different things. And I mean, there's one particular thing that I was a strong believer in. I'll just tell you, it has to do with this. I was a big believer. I felt like those saved the world, until one day I had this experience and it became very clear to me that I had been very wrong and deeply misled. And I don't know. I mean, I think I was objectively wrong about my beliefs, prior to that experience, but I think it was right for me to be wrong about those things. Like, I think that I was on the right path for me at that time, and now I have a different conclusion because I have done different research, I've been exposed to different information, had different spiritual experiences that have led me to a new space in that particular thing. And I think it's okay for everybody to be where they're at in their own journey with not just that particular issue, but all issues. We all get to have our own perspectives, and we might be objectively wrong according to like God's divine truth of how everything is working. And that's okay, because maybe that's exactly right for where we are in our journey at that time. So anyway, I feel like I'm a much less judgy person now than I was a long time ago, because of that perspective. And I feel like for me, I don't really feel the need to like change people's opinions so much. Like sometimes I'll still post about stuff, but because I feel like if people had more information, they would think differently. But um, I don't know. It's not my job and it's not your job to change anybody's mind about really anything. The only person who can change someone's mind is themselves. Until that person decides they are going to change their mind, it's not going to happen. And it's not always a decision. Like, I don't feel like I consciously changed my mind about something, but rather, these different experiences happened in my life and suddenly my mind was changed. And isn't that just how it works? Have you ever said, I'm going to change my mind today? I don't think that's happened for you. I mean, maybe if you have, I want to hear about it. But I think for most of us, that's just not how it works. And in real life, um, what ends up happening is this series of events, external stimuli, mixed with our internal reaction to that stimuli that naturally leads to a shift. And it's out of even our control. It's out of everyone's control. Who wakes up and says, I think I'm going to believe something different today. I think I'm going to think that I was wrong after all these years today. Like, no one does that, but it happens. And it happens because of things that we can't consciously control. So anyway, I hope that that gives us all some peace and just like chillness about all of our journeys, because I'm sure there are people out there that you really disagree with and you're hoping that they'll wake up one day and agree with you. But guess what? They probably feel the same way about you. And one of you is right and one of you is wrong, and it might not be the one that you think. But either way, what if it's okay for all of us to be wrong? What if it's okay for all of us to be blind? What if it's okay for all of us to just wake up every day and do our best to just hang out with God and do what God says we should do and just trust that it's all okay, and everyone is going to get their own perspective in their own divine timing. Okay. Sorry, back to the chart. This is culminating in this beautiful little sextile right here to Neptune at 29 degrees, pretty tight. This is 29 degrees, 29 degrees. Down here's 27 degrees. Everything is pointing to this Neptune at 29 degrees, but it's also retrograde. So that's another interesting vibe. Neptune deals with spiritual connection. It deals with our ability to listen to spiritual things on the other side, both good and evil. And that's the whole thing also with being really spiritually open. If you're really spiritually open and you don't have excellent boundaries, you may be spiritually led by spirits that you might not actually want to be led by if you had better boundaries and knew what you were listening to, right? So, so anyway, this is a very interesting thing. All of this, here's the big message of this grand kite. Okay, we're being invited to get out of wishy-washy zone and take a stand, to reevaluate the ways that we've thought about the world, to reevaluate the ways that we've thought about our leaders and about the overall systems that we're living in, especially economically, like housing market, government. Capricorn governs the government. And we're being invited to think really differently. Why? It's pointing at that little little Neptune at the end of that Grand Cross. Why? For a spiritual shift, for a spiritual review, that spiritual we're invited to change how we're viewing things on a spiritual level. We're invited to change our spirits and heal our spirits and get those better boundaries. And I'm going to share it again because this is an interesting placement. Um, it's here in the first house. And that's the house of the body. It's the house of our physical well-being, okay, in our flesh. And that to me is just really interesting. We are having this big experience, all these big shifts that are going to be taking place in the next like 3 to 4 months is really a big invitation to rethink our divine connection, our spiritual connection, and how we're experiencing that inside of our own bodies. Okay, just really, really interesting. And I love this as well, that right here is the part of fortune and the North Node right here at 2 degrees and 6 degrees in Aries in the first house right next to that Neptune. It's our destiny to become much more aware of how these things are impacting our bodies. And so let's talk about that in the context of like politics, I guess you could say, where like rising gas prices impact the price of food because we have to transport that food, and the rising food prices are going to impact our physical bodies, right? Um, that's just one example of how these different things, I mean, shelter impacts your physical body. If you can't buy a house and you can't afford rent, like that's going to affect your physical body. This is all a really big invitation to learn how to trust God with our physical bodies. Can we say, I don't know how I'm going to afford the rent this month, but God, I trust you with the care of my physical body. To me, I'm looking at this and like, that is the big thing that I'm seeing, a big invitation to get real with God about the care of our physical bodies. And I think it will be a little bit hard, a rough wake up call being across from Venus over there. And that's not all, because we have some other like little crazy stuff that's happening with Venus. And I'll come back to that in just a little minute because I want to talk about the sixth house really fast, which deals with daily routine and like work in the sense of like the job that you do. Capricorn deals with work, like showing up to the office and like managing the business and stuff like that. The sixth house deals with the work of like managing your life, like doing your laundry, like your daily routine. If you get up and go on a run, that goes in the sixth house. If you get up and you brush your teeth, that goes in the sixth house. Like that's the kind of work that goes in the sixth house, those daily routines. And here we have the sun and the moon and Mercury all in there, a really big preoccupation with daily life. What I'm seeing here is that on a personal level, probably a lot of us are going to be so preoccupied with just getting through the day that it may be a little bit hard to step back and look at that bigger picture of what's going on with this grand trine. But this grand trine, I think it's going to be shoved in our face whether we like it or not. But it's going to be really a pain. Look at this other grand trine, this triangle right here between Chiron and Mercury, which is right next to the moon, and then having the sun in that same house. I think that what's going to happen is probably we're going to be like, how am I going to get through the day on a personal level? And it's going to be probably, I don't know, this looks like a little bit of a stressful situation unless you can alchemize the wounds about that stress into wisdom. If you can handle this with wisdom, you take that step back and say, okay, God, let me be a tool in your hands. Get rid of my agenda and let me enact your agenda. And as I enact your agenda, I trust that my daily stuff is going to work out for me. I'm going to find the time to brush my teeth. I'm going to make sure that all my stuff works out for me. We have to put ourselves into the hands of God for this to not be stressful. If we don't do that, it's going to be a pretty big stress. And let's see, it looks like there is this little, oh yeah, look at that. A yod between Mars and the moon and Pluto. Let's think of what that will mean. Feeling like we can't move forward and feeling like our feelings are, I don't know, almost like behind a closed door or something. And It all points to Pluto, this big transformation of government. That's what is going on. Big transformation of government. And as we're dealing with any emotional trauma that we may be feeling about transitions in government of any kind, the way to feel calm about that is to focus on our creative endeavors at home. Okay, 29 degrees of Cancer. What can we do that makes us more present, that connects us with our family, that connects us with the actual home, the shelter that we have right now? That is going to be very, very helpful to us. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at, oh, come on. Here we go. This on the outside is America's natal chart, and we have some interesting stuff going on in here. Okay, I'll talk about this one first, which is that America's natal Neptune is at 22 degrees of Virgo. And for the past several years, Neptune right now has been hanging out in the 20 degrees okay, from like 20 to 29 degrees of Pisces, okay? And so can you see this one right here is right now, this one right here is America's birthday chart, and do you see how they're almost exactly across from each other, but not totally across. If they were totally across, it would be a little bit more a little bit more up here. Boop. But this is why that Neptune opposition is really important, because Pisces deals with illusion, and so does Neptune. Neptune governs Pisces, and they deal with illusion versus delusion and confusion, okay? And Virgo is, of course, very logical and very analytical, and it can actually be delusional in what it thinks is logic and what it thinks is analysis, but it actually is not, and it can delude itself about its own fake logical nature, okay? If you've ever met somebody that's so logical and they stick it in your face all the time, but you can like see that they're actually operating out of emotions, but they've just like justified their emotions with a lot of logical like blah, blah, blah. That's like totally a Virgo vibe. I say as a Virgo, so I like, I've played that game many a time. I'm sure I will again. Here's the deal. When Neptune is opposing Neptune, it just obscures things, especially having the natal Neptune in Virgo, having the transiting Neptune in Pisces has made it so, especially around health issues, facts have been obscured. Okay, so having Neptune in Virgo, Virgo deals with health, the health of the physical body, and having this Neptune opposition during what, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now we're getting into the other half of 2024, and finally Neptune has gotten far enough away that it's no longer opposite, like exactly opposite America's natal Neptune. So while transiting Neptune was across from America's Neptune, what did we have? A ton of illusion and delusion about what we were told was logical. Let's just stand 6 feet apart, guys, because air definitely won't move 6 feet away from you. You know, germs definitely won't go through the gigantic holes in your cloth mask, like obvious lies that are hilarious. But so many people, including people at the top, like believed that stuff, and a lot of that was this Neptune opposition. And now that Neptune has moved just beyond that opposition, we're starting to see a whole lot of admissions that, yeah, actually the 6 feet rule was totally made up, literally out of thin air, if you may pardon the pun. But like, we have documentation now that that is true. They made that up with no evidence. Now all of this stuff is coming out, that so many of the things they told us were absolute lies. But it had to wait until Neptune made this transition until that stuff could come out. And the further Neptune gets away from our natal Neptune opposition, the more truth I think is going to come out. But back to the chart, because that's not really the most important thing that we have to talk about. We have to talk about Pluto and the economy, and this is the thing that stood out to me when I looked at this grid. This is called the aspectarian, and it shows you all of the lines between all of the different aspects between the two charts. This is what I do not like. Do you see this line entirely of red squares? Okay, this is Venus, America's natal Venus. This is America, and this is Pluto re-entering Capricorn. Oh man, Venus governs money. It governs what we receive. It governs like the good stuff that we receive. It governs our relationships with our allies slash also our enemies, you know, like the one-on-one relationships, and it governs our contracts. Okay, our contracts with the bank, our contracts with the other countries, our contracts with our leaders, like all of the contracts. And here we have it. It's a square. Those red ones are basically not considered that great. So here we have Venus square Venus, okay? Tension between all of our money and relationships. It is conjunct Mars, the planet of war. So that's great. It's really fun. And then back to the red, all the way across. It's squaring Neptune, which again deals with illusions. It can deal with like propaganda. Interesting. It's squaring that black moon. It's squaring the nodes, both the nodes of our destiny, okay? Squaring our boundaries, squaring our part of fortune. Sorry, all of these are squaring the natal Venus. And when I saw that, I just thought, oh boy, that does not look like a really fun time for our economy, for the government, for our contracts, for our alliances. I just thought, oh my, that's like so much red right there. And you know, I'm really not one that thinks that all squares are bad. Like I think historically there was this idea that all squares are bad, and I have a lot of squares in my chart. I don't think they're necessarily bad, but they do add a lot of tension, and that's why people have considered them bad in the past, because um, most people don't handle the tension very well. I think we can agree. Like under stress, everybody falls apart. Like if all my kids are screaming at me at the same time, you better believe I'm gonna crack and scream at them back. I'm not perfect yet. Still working on that, but you know, if you know what it's like, the like auditory overload, it cracks you. And that is true for many people in many instances. And will it be true of the stuff in America that is governed by the planet Venus? Will that tension crack something? That's the real question. Um, so we're just gonna have to see how it plays out. Um, but when I saw that line of red, that's the thing that just caught my eye, like, oh my. And let's go back and talk about Jupiter, because Jupiter's got the same thing. Look at that. Jupiter also deals with money, and um both Jupiter and Venus are called the Great Benefics, and look at this. Jupiter is red all the way across just as well, and with all the same things, because Jupiter and Venus are conjunct in America's natal chart. But I'm sitting there thinking, ah ha ha, this looks like a lot of tension on our destiny, on our boundaries, on our treasure and our like capital, the actual like dollar bills, yo. And this may be a really interesting, dynamic. I mean, we're gonna have to see how it turns out. And of course, Pluto's reentry chart has Venus conjunct the midheaven of America's natal chart. So I think all eyes are gonna be on the money, you know, and it looks tense. That's basically what we have to say about that. So now here we go. We have some bigger context about what we're dealing with. What are we going to do about it individually? So I think that the most important thing that we do right now is, number one, if we feel scared, we cannot afford that. You can't afford to be scared right now. Okay. Here's what you can afford: to use your logic brain. You can afford to connect with your creator. I think doing some good prayer journaling about your concerns and saying, you know, Heavenly Father, I am concerned about the following. Yeah, I'm concerned about the election. I'm concerned about my money. I'm concerned about my housing. I'm concerned about this. And you just write a letter to God, and then you skip a line and write down whatever comes into your mind next. Okay. And without judgment, you don't judge it. You just write it without reading it. Have a conversation back and forth, skip a line, write your thoughts, skip a line, write the thoughts that come to you. Afterwards, you pray about it and ask, like, did I get this correctly? Like, is there anything that I missed? Should I believe this? And then you go through and read it, and you use your logic brain and ask yourself, would God tell me this? And you ask yourself, does this feel right to me? And you kind of examine what you have received. I will say this is, you know, This is how prophets have received scripture. They ask God a question and write down the answer as it comes into their mind. And they're just going on whatever's coming into their head. That's how it happens, you know? So you can kind of consider this like a little s scripture for yourself on what to do and how to handle whatever dynamics are coming up, because this is going to be a national and a global energy that all the nations are going to be dealing with. And it's also a deeply personal energy where, on a personal level, you and me are going to have to sit there and say, okay, my house payment, my rent, my grocery bill, my gas money, we're going to sit there and say, okay, my hopes and dreams, what I thought I was going to do next year, and maybe I have to revise it. Who I thought I wanted to vote for, and maybe I want to vote differently, or maybe not, or maybe I feel even better about the choice that I was going to make, but we have this big opportunity to reevaluate a lot of things. And I'm not qualified to tell you what to do with anything. The only thing I feel really qualified to tell you to do is to connect with your own creator and get answers for yourself, because those are the answers that I know are going to be good for you. Okay, the answers that you get for yourself are going to be way better than any answer I could ever get for you. So I'm going to strongly recommend that you do that. Now, one more thing to mention is that we have the new moon on September the 2nd, on Monday, Labor Day. We've got a new moon, and this new moon actually kicks off another eclipse cycle. Okay, it is the new moon that builds up to a lunar eclipse on September 17th. That opens the window. We have September 17th, and then a solar eclipse on October the 2nd. And then we have another almost eclipse. It's not quite an eclipse, but it's still going to be a really, uh, it's going to be a tense energy that's going to happen 2 weeks after that. I think on October 16th, another near lunar eclipse that we've got to keep our eyes on. And all of this is happening, of course, during election season and during this final Pluto retrograde through Capricorn. So we have a lot going on. If you have time to prayer journal tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to strongly recommend that you do that. There is no reason to be afraid of this. I have more stuff to talk about because I posted on my Facebook page about the crazy things happening in Aurora, Colorado right now, which I don't even know what chart I should run on that, but I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll have to think of something because there's some crazy stuff happening in this world right now, and probably some of you may even be affected by it already. And things are probably going to escalate, but if we're afraid of that, it's just going to cause problems for us. It doesn't make our lives easier. It doesn't make it easier for us to, act in concert with God when we're operating out of fear. Like there's just no room for that. So the biggest thing that I can suggest for all of us is to get rid of fear vibes and really step into a knowledge that God's got it under control and that God cares deeply about you and your welfare. God thinks that you are really important, and God wants you to be fed, and he wants you to be clothed and sheltered, and he wants you to, I was going to say be safe, but actually I feel like that's not necessarily true, because safety is not actually God's number one concern for you. God's number one concern for you is that you are going to experience the things that you need to experience for your overall like growth and expansion as a spiritual being. And sometimes that does involve an element of unsafety, but can we trust God through the unsafety to make sure that everything still aligns for us? Can we put ourselves in situations where it is not actually safe? When we feel like God is leading us there, please do not think I'm telling you like, go endanger yourself. That is not what I mean. But rather that sometimes we are going to find ourselves in situations that are uncomfortable and that feel unsafe to us, whether because they actually are or because of our past trauma that we haven't resolved, we're going to feel unsafe. Can we trust God through those moments? That is the real question. Can we learn to feel safe even in those kinds of situations? So I'm going to go and invite you, if you're not all signed up, on my website, allieduzetclasses.com. It's me. Uh, I'm going to strongly recommend it. If you haven't done the foundational sessions, they are free. Just do it. They're easy and fast. Today I got a message from somebody whose claustrophobia disappeared after doing that. It's free. It's like probably 2 hours if you put everything on double speed and listen to it while you do your dishes, like You can fit this into your life. You don't have to give it your full brain. Sometimes I think it's more effective if you listen to it while you're on a walk or while you're, doing the dishes or folding your laundry or something, like doing something with your body so that your brain can kind of focus on that and not fight the work that's happening on the other end. The other one, after you do the foundational sessions, okay, the session for election stress, somebody just told me they just did this now. I made this for 2024. Apparently still effective, so gonna recommend this one if you're feeling stressed about the election. And the fear clearing is going to be a really good one to do if you're feeling afraid. We have to let go of it. We have to let go of the fear. That's going to be so, so critical. So anything that you do in here is going to be helpful to you because, uh, I don't know, any trauma that you can clear out of your life is going to make your overall experience so much easier, and you're going to be able to hear spiritual insight without the filter of your own trauma and your unresolved baggage from the past. So anyway, okay, get to work, guys. We have a lot to do, and we don't have too much to do, and hopefully it can fit easily into your life and be easy and comforting. And um, we're on the roller coaster, and a roller coaster can be terrifying, and you can scream your guts out and be scared, or it can be exhilarating, and you can have the time of your life. So my invitation to you is to look at this not as the end of the world, but as the exciting roller coaster where we get to experience God's miracles in a bigger and different way than we have experienced them before. Can you be open to more miracles? Can you be open to a greater expression of miracles? That is the big invitation that we have right now. So no fear, just excitement. Let's go see what happens next. Tune in with God, ask for instructions on what to do, move forward without the fear, and I don't know, come hang out with me on Facebook, Intuitive Healing with Ali Duzette. Okay, share with a friend if you can think of anybody who needs this video. Okay, bye guys.